Welcome to Still City Growth. I'm your host, Bill Ildenfritz. Each week, we'll explore the passions, expertise, and experiences of business owners and founders in the greater Pittsburgh area. Still City Growth is proudly sponsored by Murphy Business of Pittsburgh, committed to providing exceptional services to meet all your business needs. Let's dive in. He's an experienced software developer with almost 30 years experience. He's a licensed workflow master with a proven track record of successful workflow applications. He's the president of Method Automation Services. Paul Konieczny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So, hey, Paul, we start the show with the exact same question. And here it is. You ready for it?
Okay, give it to me.
What is the number one most important strategy for growing your business?
I'm going to have to go with success, right? It sounds kind of odd that would be the answer, but I always say success breeds success. So no matter how big the client or how small the client, we take a lot of care in making sure that the project's done well and above and beyond expectations, right? So when you have those happy clients, it's always easier to, get those referrals back when you're trying to land the next client or project. And a lot of times, you get brought in to solve one problem and that success, turns into, hey, we have these other 5 other problems, right? That maybe you can help us solve. So, the biggest factor or the most important element is success. And obviously there's a lot of factors below that, right? And, from project management to, QA to architectural to having the right resources, all of that means something to reach that kind of pinnacle, if you will, of success. So that would be absolutely one of my first answers there.
Excellent. Tell me a little about QA, because QA is different to everybody. What's the QA process like for you?
It's evolved over the years. Before, it was a person who would just sit there in the corner clicking the buttons, right? And maybe they had a user guide to go off of, but now it's become way more automated. And, QA specialists for us are involved from day one. What are we trying to build, right? And, they need to be part of those conversations too. But then on top of that, as the software is being built, they're also building automated test plans, so that could be Solarium. It could be any other test harness type applications, anything with continuous integration, continuous development, the CI/CD that you see in Azure DevOps, that's all getting baked into. You can't release a piece of software to the next stage or to the next, development, staging, production. You can't release it to that next level until it passes that automated test. So it's become a very technical position. I mean, some of our better QA people are really developers at heart. So you almost have to become a developer now. It's not just a person sitting there clicking buttons.
Right.
But it's really instrumental.
Yeah. How has AI, how you think AI is affecting business, including yours and just business in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. You had a lot of the Microsoft layoffs, and I read an article that said that, in the next 2 years, 50% of all the code coming out of Microsoft is going to be written by AI, which is kind of crazy. But ultimately, for us, we're definitely doing a lot with AI around solving business problems and accelerating workflow automation. So it's something that, typically you would have to route something to a person or an individual, and a human would have to make that decision. But now you can train models, you can train these AI bots to basically have a set criteria from which to make a decision, right? And that's really powerful. So now, I can skip 3 human steps and it makes a better decision. And again, just because AI is the most popular shiny thing right now, it is changing how we develop, how we build software, and the speed in which we do it. No question about it. We use a product that we'll sit down and actually sit with our customers and say, okay, what do you want this screen to look like? How do you want it to perform? And we're literally typing in an explanation of how to build the screen, and it's building it for you right in front of you, 30 seconds, And now we're having a different kind of conversation. It's not, let's take that information, go back home, program, come back a week later. No, it's a very collaborative, interactive type scenario. So it definitely changes how we design systems for people. And it is pretty amazing. It's pretty scary. Some of the stuff that we baked into our SaaS products really solved the problem for us, right? And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. But yeah,
Yeah. With that said, you mentioned the word scary. How about on the flip side? What in AI makes you a little nervous?
that there's times I'm challenging it, right, with some of the questions I'm asking and thinking, I don't never get that, and it's got the answer. It's not always right, right? And that's something that we as developers, as technical people, need to be very aware of. It's why it's not so prevalent in the legal industry right now. There's something called hallucination where it can pull data from different sources and basically make it up. Take a really good guess to make it up, but it sounds plausible, right? So we've downloaded code, from Ask AI to build something for you, and it might build some type of Python or Azure function for you, and you pull it out and you go, okay, it compiles, but it's not right, right? So you still have to do your own due diligence. It can definitely, the time it would have taken you to write that code, those 100 lines of code would have taken you a couple hours, coffee breaks, talking to so-and-so about the game last night, whatever, 2 hours, 3 hours. Now it's done in 6 seconds, and you're on to debugging it and, crafting it and refining it a bit. So yeah, there's huge speed gains in what you can accomplish using AI. But, just because you got a hammer, not everything's a nail, right? The old saying.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful and find the right places to use it for sure.
Yes. I heard someone talk in the legal field, a lawyer, about hallucinations. I mean, you still have to be an expert in your field to be able to catch that, or you just start writing that stuff and it's incorrect.
Yeah, I've heard this story about the attorney that went into court and did an entire briefing and then cited like 3 different cases that never existed, and the judge caught him on it. I don't know if this is like now a real story or now it's become folklore, right? But AI was smart enough to cite 3 cases that never existed, and the guy used it in his briefing in court and got just admonished. So yeah, you have to be smart enough to actually catch those things for sure.
Yes, definitely, definitely. What do you see? One main problem do you see businesses doing wrong? So as you're looking in, what do you see? One thing a business does wrong, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times businesses will focus on clients, which is great because the clients actually bring money in and that pays your employees, right? And a lot of times employees are overlooked. Um, so building applications, mobile applications for your company that service just your employees is really powerful, right? Because our phones we never leave without them. But it's often overlooked. And paying attention to the processes within your company, really important for those employees. Because just like, I've always said, it's expensive to hire and find somebody, right? It's more expensive to lose them. And if you don't have very good, robust processes within your own company, a lot of times, this is a younger generation coming up. We're getting older, right? We're a little more gray hair, a little less hair. But the younger generation, they're very accustomed to, hey, it's on my phone. I should be able to request a day off right here on my phone, right? I should be able to see my vacation balance. We can already get our paychecks on there, but I also want to talk to my manager about something. I want to be able to do my review over my phone or my iPad or some type of intranet. I want to be able to log my time via my phone or make notes, and it goes right into our systems. So those employee processes just as important as the client processes, I feel, because again, once you lose an employee, I always say $60,000 to $70,000 to bring an employee on, recruit them, train them, get them, effective within a client situation. And if they walk out the door, that $60,000 is just your cost, not their salaries, right? Just the cost to get an employee onboarded and effective. They walk out the door within a year, it's a tremendous loss, right? And you'd hate to lose somebody because somebody walks in and goes, wow, guys are really behind the times here. This isn't the place I want to be, right? Not very innovative, right? We might build innovative stuff for other people, but our own processes are not so good. So So I think that's important. I think it's something a lot of companies probably do overlook a little bit. That and you know we're in a very much a mode of cloud-based computing, right? So now what you see is there's not a whole lot of custom app dev being built. You're seeing a lot of people buying elements of cloud, right? So I'm going to get an AP system. So I'm going to go out and get NetSuite, and it's going to do this for me. Then I'm going to go buy a workflow tool, and then I'm going to go buy an employee management tool, and then I'm going to go buy an inventory database, or an inventory tool. So now you have all these cloud-based tools, and none of them talk to each other. So really, I see us as programmers and the importance of being able to connect those disconnected systems. So that's becoming really, I'm seeing kind of the developers are evolving to learn how to talk to all these different systems through APIs and web APIs and Data Factory and Azure. That's one of the things I think we're evolving to as programmers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's say I'm driving, because I probably should ask this question earlier. Say I'm driving my car and I hear you saying workflow tools, workflow processes. What is that to you? What is that?
Yeah, it's not only connecting disconnected systems, but it's really following a process, whether that's, approving a check request or an invoice approval or a purchase order or a vacation request. It's following that through the organization, figuring out what are the non-value added steps that we can kind of eliminate. And then how do we streamline that data so it ends up in front of the right people? So ultimately, if it was a vacation request, we want to make sure it gets to HR, right? I always cringe when people say like, hey, we've got this process we want to automate. It's very easy. So as soon as they say easy, we kind of go, that's usually when you pump the brakes a little bit. But ultimately, you think about a vacation request. Hey, it's got to go to that person's manager. That manager might have 6 or 7 people underneath of them. The person that's requesting vacation has very specific skills. And if you lose that person for that week, are you losing other people with equal skills that you're managing during that same time period? So now you have no coverage, right? So little things like that turn a vacation request into something a little more complicated than just, oh, it's pretty easy. Somebody just has to approve it and it goes up to the next person, right? So that for me is workflow. It's taking what are paper processes, turning them digital, whether it be on your phone or, your browser, but taking those processes, automating them, making sure that it does get in front of the right person in HR, and that the vacation is approved before vacation starts. So we've had that happen where it takes 2 weeks to, approve a vacation request and the person's already on vacation. So those are the challenges. And again, that's just one particular process, but there's a lot of them, right? And then when it goes into an HR system, right, that's also going to go into their financial systems, right? Because they have to deduct those days from. So now that's a whole nother, integration point, right? So yes, it got in front of HR, but HR now has to go in front of accounting. So what you find out is all of these systems are really connected, given that the processes are probably manual, but they're still all very connected. And so can we make sure that that data flows through the systems and that they're all connected and that you can build a dashboard and put it in front of the people who are the decision makers of the company? And so they have that data at their fingertips. So that's really what workflow is. It's not just, like we use Nintex a great deal, which is a workflow engine. But doesn't matter what workflow engine you need or use, you still have to kind of architect that data, right? Architect those systems and say, okay, ultimately, how are we making decisions, right? Whether it be employee decisions or client decisions or product decisions. How are we making those decisions and what are the key factors we're making those decisions based on? And that's the key. So that's really what workflow is. It's a blend of different technologies to achieve a common goal, which is making better decisions quicker, right? And that's a competitive advantage, right, for you as a company.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And let me say, say the average business, what do you think they cost themselves? Money and just like you said, maybe employees or whatever. If they don't have good workflow systems, what does the average maybe business cost themselves by not doing that?
We like to call it technical debt, right? And it starts to accumulate. And it's only when companies start to really feel the pain and they're losing market share or they're losing employees, a little quicker, than the turnover is happening a little bit quicker than normal, that they all say, oh my gosh, we should do this. And I always tell people, the process you automate today is going to cost 20% more next year. And if you don't do it, how much more technical debt, how much more percentages of technical debt have you added to your stack? Right. And then typically they'll walk in and they'll go to their IT department. There's like 3 people in there and they go, oh, we want to do all this. And they're like, well, we're 6 months behind already. So by the time we get to this, it's going to be like next year. Right. Or they didn't budget or plan for it. So, that continuous process improvement of sitting down and evaluating your own processes, it's one of the things that we offer as a company. Is we'll go out and sit down with you for a day or two, evaluate your technology stack, evaluate your processes. How does data flow throughout your organization? And what is the impact that, you're experiencing today by not having any of these processes automated or these systems connected? And what you find out is it's pretty expensive, right? We just worked with a customer right now where they have 3 people full time and all they're doing is data entry from one system to another system because they didn't have any way to connect them. Right. So you have 3 full-time employees. So figure $60,000 to $80,000 a year because they're technical people. Right. Plus benefits. Right. So now you're at $100,000. So it's $300,000 a year that you're paying for basically data entry to duplicate, and chances are they're not accurate. You're moving from system to system. There's a lot of copy and pasting, and somebody gets distracted and whatnot. So those numbers start to add up, right? It's not that you're going to eliminate those employees, but couldn't those 3 people be doing something better in your company to make you money, rather than they are just a cost center, right? At that point,
right? Yeah. So say that. What's on the flip side of that? If I implement, we'll talk about a little bit about your company here in a little bit, but what are one thing that I can maybe implement to save myself some money, using that as an example, maybe?
Yeah, that's a perfect one, right? Another one was we did a process for a bank, and everybody has to sign their non-disclosure agreement and their confidentiality agreement every year, right? And the document's like 250 pages. Well, they literally used to print it out for all 250 employees, and then it would go into their mailroom, and then the person had to sign it, and then they had to return the whole document. They couldn't just return the signature page. They returned the whole document, and it was just an absolute nightmare. And then people would come back and they'd scan it, and then so we implemented digital signatures. We dynamically generated the documents. We got their digital signatures, and it was back. It was basically stored in SharePoint, done, right? And so typically it would take 3.5 months for them to print all the documents, to collect all the signatures, to get them all scanned back in, and then to put it back into SharePoint. We did it in like 3 hours after we digital it. So you think about all of the, this is all 250 employees, some of them very expensive employees, right? This had to be vice presidents, presidents, district managers. These people are at $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 salaries. So they're taking hours to go through this document and then to sign it, then to put it back in the mailroom, not to mention just the amount of time in the mailroom. So, you talked about 4 months, and figure everybody spent, an hour doing this process, times 250. So just let's say 250 hours plus all the HR people who had to manage this process. It was always funny because they said everybody was putting in for vacation during that period. Like nobody wanted to do this, right? So even the HR people were like, this is the worst thing in the world, right? Would rather be in Disney. So it's kind of funny, but that's an expensive process, right? So figure probably, that process, that 3-month process, what it typically would cost that company is $130,000 to $140,000 a year to do that one document and signature. And so we automated that entire process, workflowed it. There's any conflicts of interest, it got escalated up to the president of the bank, to their legal team, right? Whatever the case might be, but it was instant. So they actually had all 250 documents signed, or 240 documents signed, within 3 hours after we automated the process. And nobody had to print a piece of paper.
Right. Wow. Use time saver, save money. The biggest thing for me is even just the morale. I mean, like you said, people are trying to go on vacation, versus working. and you even are missing that. Now you do it in 3 hours, like you said. That's amazing, amazing, amazing. Let me ask you this question: what is one challenge our listener community could help you solve?
For us as a company, we're always looking for the right technical partners. We're also looking out for, potential funding, whether that's through grants or through VC. We're kind of opening ourselves up to that right now, which we haven't done before. We've always been an organic company, but we've got quite a few products, SaaS products that are kind of coming out and being expanded, and so we think that type of help could actually accelerate the growth to market, and speed to market rather. So yeah, that's one thing that would be great if we could, and it's not just about finding, the funds. It's also finding the right technical partner, maybe somebody who's gone through, where we're at as far as a growing stage and said, hey, I've done this before. Let me kind of be your Sherpa, if you will, and move through this process and avoid some of the pitfalls maybe I made, right? Type of scenario. So yeah, and it's a little bit of that as well.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So let's kind of first half we kind of learn from you. Second half let's learn more about you. So next, take me back in time when you were younger. Did you know you'd be running and growing a company back then?
No, not even close. Thought I was going to be a heart surgeon, but that
Really?
didn't work. I never thought about it. I mean, obviously when I went to school in 96, 94, 91, right? You were just getting, decent PCs were kind of really into the market, and programming was fun. And, it was a challenge to solve problems. And that's what kind of excited me, was just finding solutions to problems. Right. And software lends itself to that, where you're always being creative as well. So for me back then, I guess I kind of evolved into it. I thought, at 16, I thought I was going to be playing the PGA Tour, but that didn't happen either. So, but yeah, I think I was drawn to solve those problems. It was more fun, right? And that's kind of how I evolved into the development world.
Nice. So tell me a little about your company. What we talked about a little bit, but what do your company specifically do? How do you specifically help your customers?
Yeah, no, great question. So we were founded in 2011, and I was founded based on the fact that I used to sell into the federal space. Spent a lot of time in DC, a lot of military bases, DoD, and it was always a challenge. We were, run into these projects where there would be, 20, 30 developers and 30 project managers, and these projects, by the time they would get them done, the process had already changed drastically. So what they delivered might have worked a year ago, but now the process changed, and it was just really ineffective. And it was frustrating. And I was like, with 3 good developers, I could probably knock this out in the same amount of time or less, right? Because there's just not so much, there's no speed to it, right? There's no alacrity when it comes to getting something over the finish line. So based on that, I was like, you know what? I'd like to start a company and maybe try to bring that to the public sector. And then we kind of moved into the commercial space as well. But we founded it based off of a company called K2. They were based out of Bellevue, Washington. They were a workflow company, and K2 ultimately got bought by Nintex. So now we're a Nintex partner. But we've always done workflow. We've always done business process automation, robotic process automation. And I've always been in the automation space my whole life, pretty much. So whether it was actual robots or imaging technology and OCR technology, I found that way back in the days. I've always had that automation kind of play. And then I just built this team from the ground up, right? So we were organically funded. We didn't spend money we didn't have, and we found really great resources, and brought them onto the team. And it seemed like as we built that team, it just kind of grew. We got, in some cases we got lucky. We built the budget justification system for the FDA. We built it for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid. So even though we were a small company, we were getting subbed by a much larger company to come in and really do the hard work, right? And that's kind of what we got known for. Did very little advertising, very little marketing, and again, not my strong suit. But it was word of mouth that kept on leading us into bigger and better deals. Um, and again, we were a services company, right? So we are still a services company, but we also have some SaaS products. One in particular is called Act 80 Automated, is for the Pennsylvania school districts. There's 500 Pennsylvania school districts. We have 265 that are registered right now using the product. Um, Really interesting because what it does is it does taxpayer validation and verification for the school districts. And we built our own proprietary system that will validate the address and verify the address based off of the longitude and latitude and the geolocation polygon of the state or the district. And it'll tell you whether that taxpayer is living in your district or not based off their address and their longitude and latitude. It'll do 10,000 addresses a minute. So we built a really powerful system. And this is where we actually introduced AI into it, which is some people just put the wrong address in, or, for lack of a better term, mistyped the address, right? But it went all the way to the Department of Revenue, came back down to the school district, still wrong. And we had AI say, hey, out of the possible 10 addresses this could be, which one is it? And AI, these were kind of like the gray areas where it was just a bad zip code, or it was a bad street number, or a misspelled street name, right? AI took our accuracy rate from it was 99.1%, and it went up to 99.9997%. So, and that doesn't seem like a huge thing, right? Because it's fractions, right? But when you're talking about, say the school district of Philadelphia has 650,000 taxpayers that they have to review.
Wow.
They were done in 3 to 4 hours. And this is a process that typically would take 4 to 5 people up to a month and a half to complete. So we automated the entire process. It's up on the web. It's clean. It's nice, right? And so we're growing that particular side of the business. We're adding more modules that school districts can leverage. And that's going to be coming out here in July. We have a couple of new modules coming out, but that's how, we kind of grown this business, is that we're doing, services on one side where we're still, doing workflow processes for companies and helping them through their digital transformations. And then the other side of that too is we have some products that are coming out as well.
Very nice. Very nice. What's a typical day for you like?
It's long. I'm usually in here at 4:30 in the morning and leaving around 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. So it's typically a long day. Lots of phone calls. We have some developers that are overseas in Thailand, and so my calls start with them in the morning, and then we have clients on the West Coast, so sometimes it goes a little bit over as well.
Right. You want to give a shout out to any of your team member? I know you mentioned your team a little bit. You want to give any kind of shout out or any thank you to your team?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're all great. From our CFO down to our lead architect, Michael Kolchinsky, he's amazing. One of the smarter guys I think I know. And it's great, right? Those guys are fantastic. Our director of sales, Brian Anderson's always done a great job and kind of finding that new business for us as well, and really driving the sales process for Act 80 Automated. It's been an interesting journey, and I think it's going to continue. I think it'll be fun. I think, now we're just kind of, Act 80 Automated has been out in the school districts for the last 3.5 years now. So this will be its 4th year on the market, and it's just going to continue to grow. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does. I know you mentioned a couple of products coming out. I don't want to share any secrets, but I'll just ask: is there any product you want to speak about? If not, we're not. That's okay.
Yeah, no. So we're going to be automating, as part of Act 80 Automated, is we're automating the right to know process, and we're leveraging AI to actually accomplish that as well. So that'll be tightly integrated into the process of right to know. And that's going to be really exciting. I'm excited about that product. And then the second product is a mobile application called Hardcode. And what it does is it it's actually integrated with Acumatica, which is an ERP system from Microsoft. but it's a mobile and web application, primarily mobile for people who do construction, or any type of job work, whether it's customized pools, customized homes, landscaping, right? Anywhere where you're leveraging contractors and you want to build a project. And you want to track that project and then also pay your contractors. And again, there's another place where we leveraged AI where you have these chat capabilities that we built into it within the mobile app, where if one of your contractors speaks Spanish, you can speak English to him and it automatically translates to him in Spanish. When he speaks Spanish, it comes back as English to you. So it's real-time translation in between. So it's really interesting, a lot of fun and exciting, so that'll probably be coming out here in August.
Very nice. Yeah, my listener community, go watch out for it. I will tell you one thing I will notice is when we had our pre-call, I love your passion for this. You were, I got off the phone. That's why I thought about that. You're very passionate about your business. You're very passionate about automation. I find that fascinating, and I respect that for sure.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, look, it's great to see the effect you can have on a company, just by automating some simple processes sometimes. And again, they're working on the company, right? And sometimes you need somebody to come out with fresh eyes, just take a look, reevaluate, right? And sometimes I always say you can have a 50-cent solution that can make $100,000 problem go away. A lot of times people have technology stacks that they barely use. They use 5% of them. They're paying for 100%, but they just don't know what else is underneath the covers. And that's where we come in, right? And be able to help and show them that and mentor, right? We don't need to take over your IT department. What we need to do is empower them and augment them when needed, right?
Yeah, no, excellent. Let me ask you this question. If you can go back in time and meet yourself the day you founded your company, what advice would you give yourself?
Have a good lawyer.
True.
And a very good accountant. No, actually, the advice I would probably give myself is you're not going to do it all, right? Because as when you build this company, it's organic. You're doing the books, you're doing the hiring, you're doing the interviewing, you're doing, you're wearing every hat in the company, right? You are the company. But as you grow, be quick to find a better resource than you are at that particular skill and hire them, right? Don't wait too long, right? And you'll be much happier, much more successful, and success will go probably at a more accelerated pace than you would imagine, right? So I think that would be the advice I would give myself.
No, I like it. I totally agree, actually. What do you do outside of work for fun? When you work long hours, but what do you do outside of work?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I thoroughly enjoy fly fishing, and I still play golf. Definitely not as good as I was when I was 16, I'm sure, but still enjoy that, and kind of getting excited for the U.S. Open coming up here. So that's a lot of fun, and just spending time with my family.
You told me a couple very good golf players in your family, correct? If I recall that.
Yeah, no, but there was 5 of us, and everybody was pretty much all state,
Wow.
in golf, and all very good players. My father was an excellent player. Played against Nicholas in Ohio right before he turned pro. And then my grandfather was very good as well. So it was always in the bloodline. My sisters were both all state, very good players. So yeah, it's always in the family. Now my youngest son is kind of got the bug.
Yeah, tell me a little about that, because I we were talking about our kids a little bit, and tell me about your son and that.
Yeah, no, he's going to be a standard bearer here at the U.S. Open, so he's excited to be up close and see the real players actually tee it up. But yeah, he this year he caught the bug at the very end of last year, and way more talented than I ever was. Right, just needs to put in the hours. But yeah, he's it's a lot of fun. And honestly, I go to the range with him, I work with him. I get more out of that than going out and playing golf. So. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoy time with my daughter. I mean, it's great to be with the family, and you get a lot out of it spending that time. Especially when you're in business, you don't have a lot of time sometimes, so it's really important to take those breaks and enjoy family for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a game that you can play for the rest of your life. So I told all of my kids, I have 3, and I said, you don't have to be great. You just have to enjoy it and have fun. And it's a game you can play till you're 90.
Yeah.
No problem.
My daughter runs track. I know we were talking about that a little bit before, but she runs track. And you can run for a while, but eventually it catches up to you. I'm 55, it catches up with my knees, but you're right. I can still go golf.
Yeah, absolutely. And enjoy it, right? It's, we're not, I just played Oakmont 2 weeks ago, and the next day I felt like I was in a car accident. It was brutal. The roughs are 5 inches high, and the greens are running 14s on the stint meter. But it's fun. Like, you have to kind of remind yourself that you're playing at a great place, and it's fun. And, and I met some amazing people, and that's part of the game as well, is that, I meet a lot of business people on the golf course, and you learn a lot about a person when you watch them play.
I discussed that too. I do find it amazing. There are some interesting people to watch and learn from when they're golfing. That's for sure. Some positive and some negative sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how can any of these customers connect with you?
So you can go to our website, www.method-automation.com, and connect with us through there. That's probably the primary place.
Well, I want to definitely thank you for sitting down with us and talking. I really enjoyed this conversation, our pre-call conversation. So I really appreciate that for sure. I want to thank the audience. Hope if you learned something today or laughed, please tell somebody about the podcast. Again, sir, I want to definitely thank you. And I hope you have a great holiday weekend.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And this has been another exciting episode of Steel City Growth. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Steel City Growth. Thanks for joining us. For show notes and more, visit steelcitygrowth.live. Steel City Growth is proudly sponsored by Murphy Business of Pittsburgh, offering expert guidance in buying, selling, and valuing businesses to help you achieve your goals. Until next time.